Hello, everybody. Well, if there's one thing to be grateful for at present, it's surely the fact that one doesn't have to take one's hungover carcass up the M1 and the M6 on New Year's Day to Goodison Park. At least the 5:30 start would have given one some bit of recovery time, I suppose. The match against Everton is the property of BT Sport, and the Eyes Up Mother Brown team will be working hard on their confectionery-based puns on the YouTube channel, should you be that way inclined. So the Toffee men then. Well, their season has flowed in three fairly distinct phases so far, each phase lasting for exactly 5 games. They came out of the blocks like Usain Bolt on a motorbike, winning 4 of their first 5, away at Spurs and Palace and at home to West Brom and Brighton. This was followed by a 2-2 draw at home to Liverpool, in which Virgil van Dijk became the first player ever to pick up an injury. At that point in proceedings, they were top. However, Phase 2 of the season consisted of 5 games, of which they lost 4. Defeats away at Southampton and Newcastle, and at home to Leeds and Man United were interrupted by an away win at Fulham. All that saw them drop to 8th. The third set of 5 games began with an unpromising 1-1 draw at Burnley. However, they then proceeded to win their next 4, with home wins over Chelsea and Arsenal, being added to 3 pointers on the road at Leicester and Sheffield United. This saw them in second place for a bit. However, the prevalence of COVID in the Manchester City ranks saw what would have been an interesting match at Goodison postponed at short notice, allowing Leicester and Man United to move ahead, leaving Everton in 4th spot with 29 points from their 15 games played. At this point, one would normally comment on the fruits of Daisy, the socially distant support-bubbled personal assistant with the beautiful smile, and her labours on the new signings that Everton had brought. However, having sent a side up there back in September for the League Cup, much to the annoyance of David Sullivan, who's bemoaned the cost of transporting the squad up to Merseyside, Daisy has already done all this once, and given how hard she works usually, I'm sure you'll forgive me for a little cut and paste job, with some slight embellishments on this occasion, as I give her the hour off. I know I spoiled that girl. 19-year-old left-back Niels Nkunku arrived on a free from Marseille, for whom he hadn't made a league start. He arrived having turned down a 3-year contract down on the Riviera, on the grounds that he was unconvinced that the club's sporting plan for the future would enhance his personal development. Hence the move to Merseyside, which no doubt will enhance the player's personal bank balance. 3 of his first team appearances have come in the League Cup, the other one coming in the league, obviously. They spent a few more quid on Brazilian midfielder Allen, 21.7 million more to be exact. That money reunited Allen with his boss Ancelotti, the pair having worked together at Napoli, who are the recipients of said cash. Allen holds dual Brazilian-Portuguese nationality and actually had the potential through a distant relative to play for Italy, who apparently made discreet inquiries as to whether or not the player was partial to pasta. The player's appearance for Brazil in the Copa America put paid to that particular avenue of international football once and for all. Allen is likely to miss this one, a small hamstring tear proving a bit troublesome for the player. The third arrival was another freebie in the form of James Rodriguez. He came in from Real Madrid. The player, who we are informed we must refer to as James, lest we attract the attention of the Office of Football Pronunciation's Compliance Squad, appears to have settled in quite well at Goodison. He netted his maiden goal in English football in the 5-2 defeat of West Brom early on in the season. Clearly, Himmy, as I guess what I was supposed to call him, was not in vogue at the Bernabeu. He spent 2017-18 and 2018-19 on loan at Bayern Munich, assisting with their customary Bundesliga wins on each occasion. However, Bayern declined the option they had to make the deal permanent for a fee of €42 million, and the player returned to Madrid, featuring only 8 times as they won yet another La Liga. A departure at the end of his contract was inevitable, though few would have had Everton high on their list of potential destinations for the player. He's another doubt for this one, with a calf injury causing a few problems. He's 50-50 at time of writing. The fourth arrival came from Watford, whose post-relegation carcass was raided for Abdoulaye Doucouré. One of the better players in the Hornets squad last season, the likelihood of him hanging around in Hertfordshire was always going to be remote, the player having not been too vocal about how happy he might be going to visit Barnsley and Rotherham over the next few months. The £20 million paid will no doubt have been gratefully welcomed by Mr. Duxbury, who's currently working at Watford these days. Since we played them back at the end of September, they brought in 2 more players. £20 million went each to Norwich City in return for central defender Ben Godfrey. Injuries meant an earlier debut for him than perhaps might have been anticipated, but he would appear to have acquitted himself well. The other post-Daisy arrival came in the form of keeper Robin Olsen. The Swedish custodian is on a season-long loan from Roma. Although signed as backup for Pickford, he started a couple of league games as Pickford has been given the occasional day off, although Ancelotti has been keen to stress this has been nothing to do with Pickford's occasional lapses in reliability. In addition to James, or James, or whatever you want to call him, and Alan, they will also be missing Digne and Delph, who have ankle and thigh issues, respectively. Richarlison is also a doubt, following an incident where they had to follow concussion protocols. Let's move on, shall we, to the wild and wacky world of association football. And the spectre of COVID looms heavily over the game once more. Well, not just the game, but that's what we're talking about here. As mentioned, Everton's game against Man City was postponed, with the citizens being in possession of a number of positive tests. Sam Allardyce was vocal in his support for a football circuit breaker as the new super improved version of the virus continues to wreak havoc. Though the cynic in me wonders just how vocal Allardyce might be were West Brom slightly better placed in the league. One can't help thinking that some sort of break will eventually be forced upon the game, especially when you consider that with the third round of the Cup coming up, hundreds of non-Premier League footballers will be tested for the very first time. There may be more trouble ahead. Talking of COVID, Amazon pundit Karen Carney has incurred the wrath of Leeds by suggesting that they owed their Premier League place to the virus that hadn't made the most of the enforced break last season. These are a bit cheesed off at this state of affairs and published a tweet mocking Carney, which prompted thousands of Twitter people to pile abuse on her. Nobody really emerges from the whole thing with any credit, except perhaps whoever's in charge of publicity for Amazon. Okay, let's move on to us. Well, hands up who saw that team selection coming. No, not you, Mr. Moyes. That would be insider dealing. The starting 11 was more akin to that which one might have been looking for at the Brighton match. Debutant Dawson had a decent debut in a solid no-nonsense sort of way. In fact, Dawson provided the comedy moment of the match, connecting with Che Adams firmly in the head, as opposed to the ball. Fair play to Adams and his teammates for not making too much of a fuss about it, recognised the incident for the pure accident that it was. Though, given the identity of the referee, maybe they were worried that Madley might have used or issued a stern punishment for what was a vicious headbutt by Adams on Dawson's foot. After the first 20 minutes or so, when Southampton seemed to have a bit more pace about them, we settled down and, in the end, fully deserved the point. The return of Antonio was a sight for sore eyes. More seemed to happen in the short period that he was on the pitch than had occurred in the rest of the match put together. I wonder if we could remove his hamstrings in between matches and keep them in some sort of medical facility, so they're in tip-top condition for match days. Well, at least they could look at something a little bit more high-tech than the hot water bottle he was seen bearing in the stands before he replaced Haller. There again, given our owners, we should be grateful, I suppose, that the club stumped up as much as it did for a hot water bottle. The much-discussed Benrahma looked fairly bright when he came on, though some of his passing lacked a bit of precision. A couple of times, either a lack of pace on the ball or a ball played slightly behind the run slowed up the pace of an otherwise promising attack. However, it did cause a different kind of threat which Southampton struggled with. Still a useful impact sub, I'd suggest. Injury-wise, the list is down to one, that one being Arthur. The fact that some key players are able to have a day off will be welcomed at this time of year, although that falls far short of the extra day afforded to Everton thanks to COVID. Everton are in good form, but as long as nobody nicks Antonio's hot water bottle, the return of Antonio will transform the team, giving a much welcome boost. So for my prediction, I'm going to go for a well-earned draw. Please, Mr. Winston, please put the £2.50 I was going to invest in shares of Amalgamated Hot Water Bottles Limited instead on a wager for a 2-2 draw. Enjoy the game.